The 2024 NFL Draft is in the books, and Bengals Director of College Scouting Mike Potts is here to break down all 10 Bengals selections.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm James Erpine, and we, as in my co-host Jake Lisco and I, will be joined by Bengals Director of College Scouting Mike Potts in 60 seconds or less. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go, and I admit it, I have a competitive side, and if you do, Monopoly Go is perfect for you. The mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly is available right now in the App Store or Google Play. Download Monopoly Go for free today. And Mike Potts obviously had a huge hand in the Bengals' 10 draft picks from Amarius Mims all the way down to Matt Lee, their final selection in the 7th round. And so without further ado, let's get to our interview with Bengals Director of College Scouting, Mike Potts.
Mike, a lot of picks in this draft that we're going to talk about today. Amarius Mims, the first of those picks. You've talked about these guys. We've talked about these guys all week. My question for Amarius Mims to start is, he's talked about areas for improvement. You turn on the tape, there's natural pass protection ability there, great feet, especially for a guy that's 340. When you had him in and you met with him, what were the big takeaways from meeting with him in person that sold you on Amarius Mims' ability to play at the next level?
I think he's really just a good person. If you have to sum it up, the character's really good in terms of the reports that we got from Georgia, talking to everybody down there at the school. And then he's just a fun guy to be around. I'm sure you guys talked to him and some of his media availability after we drafted him. Really good personality, a lot of positive energy, very bright-eyed young man. Really enjoyed spending time with him, both at the Combine and when we brought him in on the 30 visit. I was down there at Georgia's Pro Day, got a chance to be around him there as well. So it just aligns with the information that we had from the school in our scouting process, and just gave us that much more conviction on him as a person and as a player.
Mike, as far as his ceiling goes, I think everyone is agreement when you see 6'8", 340, all the physical tools. He just looks different when you meet him. But the other part of it is the floor. And I think part of the narrative with Amarius Mims, at least pre-draft, was he's got a low floor because he only has 8 college starts. How did you guys view, or how do you guys view his floor as a prospect? Because I'm sure that you take that into consideration as well.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree that he has a low floor, honestly, when watching his tape, because his tape's really, really good. There's honestly not a whole lot that you can nitpick or poke holes in about his tape. And yeah, he only started 8 games, but he played a lot more snaps than your average guy that only started 8 games. He was in a rotation with some high-end, draft picks there that came out last year and previous years on the offensive line at Georgia. So he does have high-quality tape. Obviously, you would like to see it, in more volume, when you're just have more overall tape to evaluate on him. But it's not a guy that's really inconsistent, and you just see the flashes and the highs and the lows on his tape. I think he's pretty even in his high level of production when you watch his tape. So I don't necessarily think that he's a low floor, high ceiling prospect. We kind of view him as a high floor, high ceiling prospect when we're evaluating him.
Do you view him as a pretty good pass protector already? Because when I look at the tape for him, he's consistently beating defenders to the spot. He's really bursty out of his stance. A lot of times has 2 feet, 2 steps of movement before you see the defenders even get off the snap. And then he has that incredible length, and that helps him recover even if he does overset a little bit or a guy sees him get to his spot and you get the inside counter move. Do you think there's a lot more to do for him? I mean, obviously the mental part of the game and getting used to playing beside whoever the guard is he's going to play beside, but do you see him as a pretty high-end pass protector already?
Very gifted in pass protection. Like you mentioned, he's got all the traits. There's not many guys that are more gifted than he is physically. And then, like we mentioned in the beginning, the character on top of that. Like you said, he's just going to need more reps. You're facing the high-end pass rushers that we face in our division in the AFC North and around the rest of the NFL, there's some of the freakiest human beings walking the earth. So that's never easy to pass block in the NFL, and it's going to be an adjustment, just like it's going to be for anybody. It's going to be something that he's going to have to get used to. And as he plays more, just angles that he plays with, the technique that he plays with is going to continue to get better and better as he gets more NFL coaching, and he's pushed and is learning from other veterans in the room on that offensive line. So we're really excited about what, not only what he is right now, but what he can be in the future.
Mike, how excited was Frank Pollock when you told him, or he found out that Amarius Mims was going to be the guy at 18? Because I'm sure position coaches all the time get excited, but if I was an offensive line coach, seeing a freak like that, being able to land him, I'm sure it would be an exciting time.
Yeah, I think Frank was really excited for sure. He did all the work on watching his film and evaluating him and grading him throughout the process, helping out, what the work that we've already done as a scouting staff. And then, I think he was extremely excited when Amarius was in the next day after we selected him. So I guess that would have been Friday. He was watching film with him, going through, starting to install our offense. And unfortunately, Amarius had to head back to Georgia, and Frank was wishing he could have got more time with him to continue that process going. So he'll be, even more excited when we get him in here next week for rookie minicamp, and then into OTAs, and then continue that development with him.
Rookie minicamp right around the corner. Do you see positional versatility with Mims? His size screams tackle. The 6'8" and the 36-inch arms and 340 pounds of movement ability says tackle as well. Do you see multiple position versatility? Do you see left-right versatility, or what was your perspective there when you were scouting Mims?
I would say right now he's a tackle for us. Right tackle and left tackle he can play. I've seen him down there at practice, taking reps over the last 3 years at left tackle. That's not to say he couldn't be a guard, but we view him as an offensive tackle and a guy that's got the ability to be a high-end offensive tackle in the NFL. But he can play both left and right side at that tackle position, and it'll be up to Zach and the rest of our coaches to determine what the best fit is and what the development plan is for him in terms of where and when he's going to crack the lineup.
Mike, I'll be careful with how I phrase this, I guess, but just my 1,000-foot view going into the draft was, in an ideal world, you get the offensive tackle at 18, and then there will be quality defensive tackles there at 49, and there only turned out to be one defensive tackle that went in round 1, but you don't know how it's going to play out. Did you guys kind of view it that way? Because obviously you get Amarius Mims, and then you address defensive tackle with Kris Jenkins as well. I know you can't bank on the ideal scenario, but was this sort of the ideal scenario going into the draft?
I think those were two positions, tackle on both sides of the line of scrimmage, OT and DT, that we wanted to address going into it. It was a really good offensive tackle draft. We were fortunate that Amarius was, able to fall to us there at 18. And then, there were some defensive tackles that we had targeted at different levels of the draft. You never know if it's going to play out that way, but we're very happy that, those were probably arguably two of our top positions that we wanted to address, whether you want to call them immediate needs, or just spots that we wanted to add depth to. If I could have drawn it up prior to the draft, I would have felt really good about that scenario playing out the way it did in the first and second round.
Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go is the game you need because, well, Monopoly Go is perfect for you, me, anybody else who's competitive, who wants to play a game with friends that they can pick up and put down at any time. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your favorite people on the planet to, well, have time tournaments, whether you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And it's anything from unique stickers where you can trade with friends to complete big albums for prizes, or maybe you want to unlock different travel pieces to play on unique boards, hilarious emojis to taunt friends. Whether you want to win, whether you want to compete, or whether you want to team up to win, Monopoly Go has something for everyone. It feels new and exciting with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. There's also new timed events that let you win big, like massive multipliers. There's something fun for everyone to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and get into the game right now. Download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on.
You land Kris Jenkins in the second round, noted by many for his ability to get off blocks in the run game, make plays in the run game, a really high run stop rate when you look at the PFF stats. Can you talk about his pass rushing ability? It seemed like there weren't necessarily as many opportunities to do that at Michigan as you would see for, the pure three tech of the class that went in this area, the Johnny Newton who went at the top of the second round. A little bit of a different role for Jenkins, but how did you see his pass rushing ability at Michigan?
We think he's got even more untapped potential as a pass rusher. Sometimes in that Michigan scheme, he was asked to two gap. He was asked to play stout at the point of attack. Sometimes he was pinning his ears back and getting upfield, and you see those flashes of what he can be as a pass rusher. But he did a great job of playing within their scheme and did what they were asked to do. You can see in his athletic testing numbers just some of the upside that he has in his body and some of the freaky numbers that he's put up. You look at the freaks list and all of that stuff that that's been put out there publicly in terms of what he can do in the weight room or what the numbers that he put up at the combine and all that stuff. So there's definite upside. Both as a run player and as a pass rusher that I think he can get better at, and he's a pretty polished player as it is right now.
Is it fair to say that you expect, and obviously you have two veteran offensive tackles ahead of Amarius, but both of these guys are ready to contribute this year potentially? Is that fair?
I think they're both ready for sure to contribute as rookies. But again, it'll be up to our coaches. It'll be up to the camp competitions and just whatever rotation that our coaches may want to map out. Whatever the timeline and development plan is that they deem appropriate, and that could change on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month type of basis. So as we sit here now, we're very happy. I think across the board, everybody was on board with these guys that we drafted, not just the first and second round, but all 10 draft picks that we made. So across the board, coaching, scouting, ownership, everybody that's involved in that process, we're on board with these guys, and we're excited to see what they can do.
The thing that stood out to me about Kris when I met him was his energy. Is that something you guys wrote down? Because maybe it was because he had just gotten drafted the night before, but he brings the energy.
Yeah, no, I was telling somebody the other day. I mean, he lit up the room when we brought him in for a combine interview. That can be a repetitive process. Some of these players are meeting with all 32 teams back to back to back, and you're asking a lot of the same questions. They're repeating a lot of the same answers, so it can get very monotonous for the players. So when we're comparing from our perspective, all of these players, asking them very similar questions, and a guy like him comes in and just lights up the room with a huge, bright personality. Again, like I mentioned with Amarius, it matches up with the way he was talked about through our scouting sources at Michigan, and then we bring him in for a visit as well, and it aligns. So you're not seeing differences in the personality. He's kind of the same guy, not only in our in-person interactions with him, but what was described to us from staff members throughout his college career.
You guys draft a lot of captains. You talk about that ability to brighten a room. Kris Jenkins was a captain at Michigan. How often do you see a guy where he has that kind of character and you're like, that guy's going to be a captain on this team, or has a chance to be a captain on this team in the next, say, 3 years or something like that, and that works out? Is that something that you have an ability to forecast or predict at all?
A lot of our scouts will put that in their report. Not every captain is the same. Some guys are voted on by the head coach. Some are voted by the players. Some it's a combination of coaching and players voted. Some guys they want to prop up into that captain role. But like I said, when we go through a thorough scouting process and everybody's raving about a guy's leadership style and leadership ability, and then he also is a captain, a lot of guys, our scouts in particular, will project those guys to be potential NFL captains. It's obviously extremely hard to come in and do that as a rookie. So usually you're talking about 2, 3, 4 years down the line. But that's definitely something that we talk about. That's something that we look for. But again, just because the guy's a captain doesn't necessarily carry as much weight as the way that he's talked about. If he's a captain, and then it also aligns with him being described in that light through common themes from talking to everybody that we talk to, then that's what carries the most weight.
The biggest surprise for me, Mike, was the Jermaine Burton pick. And I'm kicking myself now because now that I look at the prospect, we just didn't talk much about him because we heard about the character questions. And we're like, yeah, he's probably not going to be high on the Bengals board. But I look from a football standpoint, and I'm not saying anything our listeners or viewers haven't already heard or seen, but I think he fits awesome in this offense. I think he does everything we described that you guys were probably looking for, from the inside outside flex, the vertical ability, the strong hands, obviously when a receiver that can catch in traffic downfield away from his body. He does all of those things. So let's go to the character evaluation element of this. How was that pre-draft process, and how did Jermaine make such an impact on you, the coaching staff, the entire organization?
Yeah, it's something that we want to be very thorough to find out what kind of person that we're bringing into our building. He's another guy, like I've said, that we did the full interview with him at the combine in a formal setting, brought him into Cincinnati for a 30 visit. We're at the pro day. We're spending time around him there. So it's a thorough process. And then obviously you're talking to, every person that you can possibly grab or in person, or talk to on the phone, or, set up some sort of meeting with, just to put the whole puzzle together. And it's a thorough process that we went through. Again, like the previous picks that we mentioned, everybody was on board with this. So it's not, some people have concerns, some people don't have concerns, some people like the player, some people don't like the player, or are lukewarm on them. We were all on board with Jermaine. And like I've mentioned previously to you guys, I think we've got one of the best receiver coaches in the league in Troy Walters. And then I think we've got one of, if not the best wide receiver room in the league. And he's a competitive guy who's going to want to come in and compete with Jamar and the rest of those guys. And, I think it's as good as any spot in the league that he could be put into. And we're just hoping to set him up for the most success possible.
We, of course, got that great video of Zach Taylor's excitement after the pick, where he's slamming the armrests on his chair. Bengals social media saying they thought he cracked the table. What's the most exciting thing about selecting Jermaine Burton and getting him in the building?
I think it's just, you see it when they show all the clips and the highlights, just the explosive plays and the competitive nature that he plays with. If I had to boil it down to a couple things, you love the passion that he plays with, and the competitiveness, and it just shines through on his tape. I mean, you guys mentioned all the things that he brings to the table. We don't need to go back through all of them, but in terms of a guy that can separate, has great hands, and can create big plays and a great run after catch ability as well. There's a ton of things that you can mark off. There's not a lot of holes that you can really poke in his game. He's pretty talented and well-rounded across the board. So we're really excited about what he can do. That's not going to be a ready-made type of prospect in terms of you just put him in there day one and he's ready to go. There's going to be development needed for sure, but we're excited, getting in here in our system. We're excited about what he can do for us into the future.
Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is a one-stop shop for all things sports wagering, including NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. In the NBA, well, the Knicks, they had it. They had him, and they let him off the hook. Tyrese Maxey and the 76ers escape Game 5, escape New York with a victory. And will they be able to win 2 more and shock the New York Knicks, eliminate the Knicks? I didn't think it was a conversation. Now it is. Will the Magic be able to rebound after losing by 1 point at the Cavaliers? Will the Bucks continue to rally after losing Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard to injuries? They won Game 5 to extend that series against the Pacers. You can wager on all of those things with FanDuel. And right now, you get $150 in bonus bets with signing up right now with FanDuel. That's right. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's it. So throw $5 on the team you think is going to win, or a prop bet that you're bullish on. Boom. When you win, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets to use on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you have prospects like Jermaine, where they obviously have talent and everyone in the league knows that, it doesn't take a GM to realize that he has talent. How do you anticipate where the rest of the league has him? Because outside looking in, now that you guys picked him, there are plenty of evaluators. We had one on earlier this week, Steve Palazzolo of PFF, 4th ranked receiver in the draft behind the big three. Like and he's not alone. There are a lot of people that feel that way, but obviously the character stuff or whatever pushed him down draft board. So how do you determine where you should take him based on the league and where you think he could potentially go?
Yeah, you never know for sure where he can go, because it only takes one team. One team could have potentially taken him off the board in the first round. Another team maybe wouldn't have drafted him until a lot later. So it only takes one. But when we are fully convicted on the player, like I said, across the board, and we know he's a guy that fits in terms of what we want to do on offense and can be a real weapon for us, we want to get him. Obviously, you don't want to draft him higher than maybe you think you can get him. So we do all of that work. We look at all of the external rankings. We talk to other guys around the league. There's different surveys and different things that we can pull in, maybe that people would not have access to publicly. And there's people, on other clubs that you trust. I mean, we're out on the road scouting. Sometimes we spend more time with scouts from other teams than our own coworkers with the Bengals. So, there's a lot of different conversations that go on. I know there's a lot of people around the league that really like Jermaine a lot as a player, and we were one of those clubs that liked him a lot, and we wanted to acquire him, and we didn't want to wait till a later round and risk losing him to somewhere else.
I'm imagining some sort of very civil espionage kind of relationship between you and other scouts now, where like you're like the American spy and they're the Russian spy, but you kind of have to cooperate a little bit on some things. Or am I way off there? Because that's when you're exchanging information with other teams. Obviously, you need to get something that you can use, but you probably have to give something up to get that, right?
Like I said, it's usually just in casual conversation, whether you're at pro days, whether you're at all-star games, or if it's back during the fall. You just kind of get a gauge for people, whether it's in the film room and you're evaluating a prospect. You just keep your ears open as a scout and listen to all the things you hear and take in all the information you can with your eyes and ears, and then put it all together at the end of the day.
So you don't feel like James Bond, you're saying? Maybe a little bit?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
You get the sports car though, right? They give you the Audi on the road.
That'd be nice. I wouldn't turn that down.
No, not at all. McKinley Jackson, obviously, you had the need at nose tackle. Everyone knew it. What goes into not tipping your hand too much, but the league knowing you need a nose tackle and deciding to pick him at 97?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, he was a guy that everybody was on board with. Everybody liked him as a player. We did the full process on him. Like I told you guys before we got on here and started recording, we did the formal combine interview and the 30 visit into Cincinnati with each of these top picks. And, that just happened to be the way it worked out. And we gained conviction on him, both as a player and as a person throughout the process. There wasn't a ton of those huge, big-bodied nose tackles in this draft. But, when you're talking about taking a guy in the top 3 rounds, you're talking about a guy that has starter qualities. And, we think he can do that for us and perform in a starting level role for us as a nose tackle. When that is, remains to be seen. If that's as a rookie, it could be. I wouldn't rule that out or into the future. But like you said, we lost DJ Reader. We needed a big man there in the middle of the defense, and then adding McKinley and Kris Jenkins, we feel really good about where we came out on the interior defensive line coming out of this draft.
Jackson seems to have a really explosive first step. He did a lot of one gapping at Texas A&M. Jermaine Burton, similarly, talking about transitions to the NFL, his most recent year, over 20-yard average depth of target, just vertical in that Alabama offense. When you think about the transitions for these third-round picks, are those things that will be stylistically a little bit different or will require some adaptation from the players, from perhaps going to a more deal with double teams, hold the point, two gapping kind of thing for McKinley Jackson, 1.5 gapping, and maybe a more diverse, not everything's a bomb experience for Jermaine Burton?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we take every piece of information in and evaluate it. We evaluate these players' skill sets, and then it's a projection in terms of, maybe some of the things that they weren't asked to do in their college schemes, whether that's on offense or defense. So, maybe Jermaine had a lot more of the deep, high angle type of routes, the post, the go routes, big explosive down the field throws. But you also evaluate his quickness and his change of direction on some of the underneath stuff. You evaluate his instincts as a route runner, his overall feel and savvy, and you have to project that and put it all together, in every exposure that you have in terms of if he's going to be able to run some of the different routes that we may ask him to run that weren't asked of him at Alabama or maybe even Georgia as well earlier in his career. And then McKinley, Jermaine wasn't at the Senior Bowl. McKinley was, so you get even more exposure to maybe a little bit different style, a little bit different scheme, different coaching there in terms of NFL coaches that he was exposed to at the Senior Bowl. So you piece all that together, you evaluate his physical skill set, and I think he can play in a two-gap style of defensive line or one gap. Maybe one or the other. These guys have more exposure to in their college scheme. And in terms of our projection, we think they can do a little bit of everything.
Mike, you guys take Eric All with your first pick on day 3, and local kid from Fairfield High School is just from a position standpoint. It wasn't considered a deep or great tight end class, and you end up with 2 of them. Let's start with All. What stood out the most? And is this kind of ideal with what you have on the roster as a guy that has some question marks, but if he can get healthy and get that knee healthy and stay healthy, can be a long-term piece?
Yeah, I think you hit it 100%. There's tight ends on our roster that we feel really good about. Mike and Tanner are on 1-year deals this year. So you never know what the future may hold at the position. We didn't have a ton of numbers in the tight end room going into it, but coming out, we feel like we have really nice depth with adding these 2 players. Eric All, I think it comes down to the medical evaluation. We have to, trust our scouts and trust our doctors as well, and the whole evaluation process that we've done on him. I think he's a player that would have gone higher for sure if he wasn't coming off of the knee injury. He's an explosive guy. We think he has YNF ability, can bring some nice blocking ability to the table. But he's not just a fast straight line explosive guy. He can run the option type of routes underneath. Really good change of direction, fluidity, really good hands, run after catch ability. So we're really excited to add him. It's just about the timeline of getting him up to speed and off of that injury. I think he just overall has a well-rounded skill set, both as a pass catcher and as a blocker. So we're really excited to add him. It goes into what you were asking about Jermaine, just in terms of putting a value on him. It got to the 4th round, and he's a guy that we had a ton of conviction on, another guy that was in here in Cincinnati visiting for us, that we were able to get due to him being from Cincinnati. We were able to get him in on a visit and not count against one of our 30. So that was awesome to spend some time with him here in the office and gain even more conviction on him after, you kind of fall in love with his tape in the evaluation on him as a player. So, we, at the end of the day, we felt like taking him there in the 4th round was really good value, and we didn't want to risk waiting another round in the possibility that he could go off the board to another team.
You talk about another Iowa tight end who has all of this different skill set to play inline, to play outside, straight line speed, the ability to change direction. I've asked this question of others who aren't employed by NFL teams this week, Mike, but I'm going to ask you now. Can I have permission from an NFL scout to start scouting the helmet on tight ends coming out of Iowa? Just like a sliver of permission? Is that cool?
I mean, I would say if there's one place that you can in terms of the tight end position, that would be the best place to do it. I would never put that completely on scouting the helmet, because you could always get into trouble. But in terms there's some schools at specific positions that really have put out a ton of guys, and Iowa at tight end is probably as good as any. That's any example that you could put up there.
And then the question is 1 year enough? Because he obviously transferred from Michigan, and then you have a whole nother conversation around scouting the helmet that we don't have to get into. James, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Let's talk about Josh Newton a little bit, because he's someone that left quite an impression on us. Just conference call. We haven't met him yet, but he seemed obviously excited to get picked by you guys. He mentioned he wanted to be a Swiss Army knife on defense, would do whatever Lou wanted him to do, of course. What stood out when evaluating him? And do you think he can be that, where he plays nickel or he plays outside and is one of these backup boundary corners this season?
Yeah, we think he has that kind of versatility. We think he can play inside and outside. And what you heard on that conference call, I think we see that on his tape in terms of the passion that he plays with, the instincts, physicality. Very productive in terms of ball production. So we're really excited about him. He's a guy that we had high regard for. Scouting him over the past couple of years after he transferred in there to TCU. So he's a guy that there's a lot of these guys that you're surprised that they're there, and the reason that I keep saying that is because when the guy is valued higher than where we take him on the board, that's the reason they end up being the selection in a lot of cases, because that guy is valued higher than the round that we ended up acquiring him, and that's the case here with Josh as well.
You listen to the draft analysts, again, who don't work for teams, Dane Bruglers of the world. They thought Josh Newton was a first-round player going into the year. Did you see it that way after his second to last year in university? And how did his last year kind of contribute to his eventual draft status for you and for the league?
Yeah, we liked him a lot coming, just based on our scouts evaluation off of 2022. I think, maybe looking at last year, he probably had a little bit more ball production, and then obviously he's in more of the limelight in terms of the great season that TCU had and their playoff run and everything like that. Obviously, their season didn't go quite as well this year, and he still had a productive season and still had really good tape for us to evaluate. So I wouldn't say there was a major drop off or anything like that. But in terms of the past 2 years altogether as a whole, you evaluate the whole picture and the overall product. And he's a guy that, we haven't lost any love for, over the past couple of years. And he's always been a guy that we regarded highly.
I think Jake wants to ask you about a few of the day three guys, but I'm going to get ahead of him on one. He wants to know why you didn't take Matt Lee 18th overall, because he loves the pick and thinks that he's going to potentially be a backup right away and contribute right away. And he was your last pick. So let's jump to Matt Lee.
Well, like I said, every team has a different draft board. We obviously liked Matt Lee a lot, and maybe could have taken him higher. You never know if Matt Lee's going to be there in the 7th round. Like I said, it only takes one team to take him, several rounds higher than that. But we were, again, glad he was there in the 7th round. Been evaluating him, transferred in from Central Florida into Miami. Really enjoyed talking to him down there at the East-West game. We did a long interview with him. And then I was down there at the Miami Pro Day and got to be around him again, for another exposure. So you really like his makeup, what he's all about, intelligence, toughness, the passion that he plays with. I think when you guys meet him and spend some time around him in some of the open locker rooms and the media availabilities that he has, I think you'll really get, really learn to like him a lot and his personality. But as a player, very athletic center, very physical, instinctive player, put out a lot of really high quality tape this year at Miami. So again, a guy that we thought maybe could have went higher for sure than he did, and maybe we would have considered him a little bit earlier, but we were very glad that he was there in the 7th round, and we were able to acquire him, and looking forward to him competing here for us when we get him in here starting a rookie minicamp next week.
Yeah, he ends up a top 100 player on the board we do every year just because of the pass production, the pass protection production, the consistent track record in pass pro in college, and the athleticism. And that's what stands out about him and Cedric Johnson to me as some of your later picks, 2 guys that are high-end athletes, and Liam Mims as well, high-end athletes with good pass protection ability. Do you see Cedric Johnson as a untapped potential kind of player where he had some production in college and looked like he was taking off through 2 years and then didn't necessarily take the next step in production, but has had these athletic traits? Is there a next step for him that you're really hoping to see early on here in Cincinnati?
I really think there is. He checks every box from a character standpoint in terms of the way that he's wired, and then you match that up with, like you said, the high-end traits that he has athletically. Very gifted, explosive, powerful athlete. We're really excited to get him in the 6th round, especially. I mean, that's a great pick for us, I think. And then you can never go wrong adding players that rush the passer and affect the quarterback. And we think there's similar to the conversation we were talking about with Kris Jenkins. We think there's even more untapped potential there as a pass rusher with him, and I'm really excited for him to get in and work with Marion Hobby, Mark Duffner, and all those guys on our defensive coaching staff. And I think they can develop his game and take him to new levels, because he's got everything there from a character, a wiring, a work ethic, an intelligence standpoint, and also has all the physical traits. So we're really excited about Cedric.
Mike, we always appreciate the extra insight that we can get from you talking about the draft class. Of course, we see it from the outside, but the bits you can provide us from the inside are always very insightful. And I know it's information that our listeners will appreciate hearing as well. So appreciate the time, Mike, that you make for us every year.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys. Always good talking to you.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.